Hey guys. All right, so we're working on Joey's Kraken, and we're at the point that we're ready to put the motor bullets on. So I thought we'd actually shoot a little video while I give Joey a lesson on how to solder motor bullets. So he's got his nice X Nova Lightning 4025 560 to go on his new 12S Kraken. Are you excited?
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty awesome, right? So we're gonna solder the motor bullets on. So I got my iron. A few years ago, I shelled out to get one of these Hacko soldering stations. Much nicer than just having
Very
simple Weller iron,
heats up very fast.
because you can control the temperature and it heats up nice and quick. So we'll get that warming up. The other things I have is solder. I like to use Kester real lead. This is the the 6337 eutectic stuff. The point of that is you really know if you've got a cold joint, because this stuff, when it cools off, it just hardens instantly. Gives you a nice good joint. So anyway, we're gonna get started. Everything's good. My iron's heated up, and we always make sure we keep the end of our iron tinned nice. So put a little bit of solder, wipe it off, clean it. We got that tin, we got my iron, we got solder, we've got flux. I have this tub of flux that I've had for God knows how long, and I actually sometimes melt up a little bit of it to make it easier to get things on. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut the leads a little bit shorter. The reason I want to do that is because they come pre-tinned with the lead-free stuff, and you can't mix the lead-free stuff and real lead solder. So I'm going to cut these off, and I am going to strip them back. Not very far. Let's see, how far do we need to go? Strip them back just far enough so they fit, like so. Have each one of these guys stripped back. Now we can strip them all because we're not soldering a battery. There's no chance of electrocuting ourselves here. You'd be very careful to do them one at a time with battery leads. But with motor, that's totally fine. Then the next thing I'm going to do is pre-tin a bullet. So we'll just do this shoot one. So I get a little bit of flux on the bullet, and I'm going to pre-tin it. So I just use my little mini vise and some solder. Make sure our end is nice and clean. This will go shockingly quick, Joey. So come over here, start heating her up. Gonna melt a little bit of solder in, and just use the solder on the end of the iron to kind of touch the side of the bullet, because you actually, what we're going for here, bud, is we don't want to melt the solder on the iron and just drip it in. We want to get the piece that we're soldering to hot enough to melt it. So I can tell, there we go. So now it's nice and hot. Just get a little bit in there, and we see we filled that little cup with solder. And we're gonna let that sit and let that harden up. Then what we're gonna do is come over, pick one of our motor wires, dip it, and we're gonna tin this end of this motor wire. Yeah, we're gonna get that hot, and you can see the flux melts. And we're gonna tin that until the wire's hot enough that the solder's soaking in. There we go. Wipe it off, and we keep our sponge nice and wet. Now we're almost there. We're almost there. Here comes the magic. Now, let me see. Got my tinned cup. I'm just going to put a little bit more flux on it. Flux is really important. What I'm going to do is, now we can do this a couple different ways. Some people have helping hands, like these little guys that you can buy in the store. An idea that I stole off of somebody on HeliFreak, which one is it? That one's a nice bright one, was to just make up this little jig for soldering motor bullets and also battery connectors. Is a couple of clothespins just glued to a piece of wood. And what I do is I'm gonna shove this wire, put the bullet in one clothespin, and shove the wire in there in the other. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna just do this freehand because I'm gonna push this in. What I'm gonna do is get in here, use the iron to get it melted, and I'm gonna shove the tin wire in there, and they both got solder on them, so when it gets hot enough, they're just gonna melt together. That's what you want to do, is get this so hot that they that everything melts, and you're just going to melt them together. All right, push that in there. So I don't even need to add any more solder this time. I'm just going to melt together the solder from both operations. I see my flux is bubbling. Just hold that. Now this here, in this little container, I've got some alcohol. And I'll just use that to clean it. And sets. Pop this guy out. And look at that. Nice solid joint. What you're looking for is that it all wicked in. You don't want a cold joint, everything wicked in really good. So in the last step, take a little bit of heat shrink, about yay long, cut this off. Yeah, I'll get her in a minute. Our workshop puppy is visiting. Put the heat shrink on right up until about there. And then I get out my heat gun. This is actually a really old monocoat sealing gun, but I use it for this kind of work too, when I don't need the big one. And we'll just shrink that on. And that's all it is to it. So really nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, I hope that helps you guys. See you later.